that's better.
Good.
Yeah, 3 podcasts in a week.
3 podcasts in a week. Yeah, you're right. I look forward to more. I'm happy to do this all the time.
Have you been enjoying it?
Yeah, very much. I love this new role. Like, I think when you're a therapist, you're just very isolated from the working world.
Yeah.
And you're just like with one client all the time, and which is beautiful and it's lovely. But when you also have different skills, you don't get to explore those in therapy. So I'm really enjoying that.
Well, I think it is a skill. You crushed it the other day.
Yeah, I like that. But you know what? I also realized that there's a lot of transferable skills between being a therapist and being like a good podcaster or asking questions. Yeah, because for me, it's all about curiosity. Like if you're curious enough about people's experience, Oprah for me is one of the best interviewers of our time. It's generally because of her curiosity. Like she wants to genuinely know what it feels like to be this and that, or to go through this and that. And that has made her such a great interviewer. So many times when she's asking questions, I'm like, oh my God, that is like a therapy question.
Because she's like really diving into it because
Really?
she actually probably cares or wants to know.
But she wants to know. That's the thing. I think it's one of the most important qualities to have, is to be curious.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Dang,
I don't know if we started, but...
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Plant and Moves podcast. I am super excited to be joined today by Dr. Nicole. Is that how you prefer to be introduced?
Nicole is fine, but
Nicole?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I worked hard for that doctor, so that's all I'm on.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm super excited to have you. You were in the studio a couple of days ago, sometime last week, and you were recording with your incredible team.
Yeah.
And so I actually was touched by your story and a little bit about what you guys are doing, because I obviously have a care for men's mental health. And so you are in the mental health space being a therapist. Do you like the word therapist?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So being a therapist, and I've noticed that there are a lot of men struggling. And so one of the things I posted today was, it was just a repost. I saw that something like 82 men a day are dying from suicide. And 75% of all suicides are men, which is a pretty mind-boggling statistic. And it's also pretty sad.
And scary.
It's
very scary. Anytime I know of a man struggling with their mental health, that's something that I really think of. Like it's not a joke. And I think it's very sad to realize that a lot of these men end up taking their own lives instead of actually seeking for help. And I think it just goes to show you how seeking help is not even an option for a lot of them. And that's really, really sad. I remember I had a family friend that was telling me about her son and what he was going through, and you can just tell. You can tell that that's someone that is going down that road.
Wow.
And you only know this because of the statistics, because you know for a fact that like it's one of the main leading cause of death for men during that period of time. And that for me is just scary. Apart from obviously being sad and angering, it's just very scary to realize that that's the option that they'll go for, as opposed
rather
to
than
seeking help. Crazy.
Well, the thing is, I think with most men, you can't even tell, because on the surface, they look like they have it all together. I held a men's group here earlier this week, and it was over the weekend. It was a pretty intense group. One of the things that I do when people come into the space is I tell them, hey, there's a commitment when you get in here that you're not going to share anybody else's business. And if we leave this space and we find out that you did share, you're cut from the group.
What do you mean share your business?
I want men to come in and feel comfortable sharing their stories, however intimate or vulnerable those may be.
Okay.
And if they feel like another man's going to expose that to the world or share that outside of this space, oftentimes they won't share. Because there's a fear around that of other people exposing their secrets or what have you. And more importantly, I think it's, even if there isn't a fear, I just like to make people feel comfortable that and have a commitment, because I think people are more willing to give when they give a commitment.
I agree. Don't you find it a bit sad that men don't feel entitled to having a human experience? Humans are soft. And they are sensitive and sensible. And I mean, since when you grow up, people will insult you of being sensitive. Anytime, anyway, a client brings that in therapy and they're like, I'm so afraid of being sensitive. What? Do you realize how your sensitivity is your gift? Literally, what it means is that you sense things on a bodily form and on a mental form at levels that a lot of people can't.
Yeah, that's a skill set.
It is a skill set.
Because you can connect with people on such an intimate level.
My sensitivity is the reason I'm a great therapist.
Yeah.
It's the reason that I get to connect with a lot of people. I would not trade it for the world. And yeah, maybe I cry easily. So what? Like, so what? I'll watch a movie, I'll cry. I'll see a beautiful scene, I'll cry. My favorite place to cry is like the airport at the arrival.
Really?
I think it's such a beautiful place. Like that kind of joy when people just like see each other after a long time. And I think it's one of the purest forms of joy. Yeah, cry, of course, cry. It's I mean, cry or feel it, or it's beautiful. Your sensitivity is a skill set, and it's a very generational thing. I think a lot of men didn't have the luxury to be sensitive because they just had to be doers.
Yeah.
And get shit done,
Well, I think also we were raised in a generation where the baby boomers per se were like, hey, big boys don't cry, big girls don't cry, suck it up. Suck it up. And don't process those emotions.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and I mean, we could go into a whole historical reason as to why that was, given their parents going through the war and going through the Great Depression and all those different things. But more so, I think that there's just a stigma around being sensitive. Yeah. And there is a stigma around feeling your emotions. But what a lot of people don't realize is if you don't process those emotions, you're going to pop. Or you're going to have some type of illness because a lot of those emotions are stored in our bodies.
Yeah.
I remember when I was going through a really, really tough breakup and I had been holding on to so much for so long, trying to be the strong one and not appear weak to everyone else. And I was in so much back pain, it was unbearable. And I started doing yoga and I'm in the middle of the yoga mat, just started bawling and I couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, what? I'm looking around me and I'm like, I hope nobody sees this. I'm literally crying in the middle of a yoga studio. And it was because I later found out we store so much emotions. And when you finally tap into those through your physiological state, they'll just start coming out. And that's a part of somatic therapy in a way.
Which is very up and coming now because people are starting to acknowledge it and realize it. It's always been there. It's always been there. I used to work in an eating disorder clinic, and I used to really, really dislike it because we're only dealing with the symptom here. We're dealing with the physicality of an eating disorder. Put me in an OCD center, same thing. Symptoms are irrelevant. My go-to symptom, anytime I start having that, I know that something else is bothering me. It's panic attack. And 2 years ago, that's what led me into my own therapy as well. Panic attack are a massive alarm bell. It has nothing to do with the moment. You're not stressed about anything that happened in the moment. It has nothing to do with the danger around you because most panic attacks happen when there's actually no danger around you. But that's your body going, all right, the mind, you're not going to listen. You're not going to do something about it. I'm going to start communicating things to your body because that's going to force you to do something about it. Depression is the same. Anytime we talk about one of those mental health struggles, issues, we only describe it on a physical level, right? Even if it's I'm quite irritable, I'm agitated, I'm not sleeping well, I'm eating too much, whatever it is. That's the way that we understand our symptoms with physicality. So what we then end up doing is we try to fix it on that physical front. And that's what a lot of the medication does. And that's not my way of saying I'm not pro-medication. I think when it's needed, it's very important. But a lot of the time, it's about numbing the physical response. So imagine you have a house and the alarm in the house starts ringing. Instead of you going why is it ringing? There are intruders. I'm just lowering the sound.
Yeah.
That's the numbing. Just lowering the sound.
That's the alcohol. That's
there you go.
The drugs. That's the steroids. That's masking it with physical fitness.
Yeah.
And that's a very prevalent here in Miami because there's so many opportunities to numb yourself here.
So what happened during the pandemic? There were no more numbing around us. There were no more distractions or tools to be able to numb our feelings. So what happened during the pandemic? Bam. a lot of people were not able to numb basically their feelings, and now they had to start facing a lot of their insecurities, a lot of their unprocessed traumas. What happened during the pandemic, and I generally believe I am one of those people as well, was crazy because it fast forwarded a mental health crisis that was meant to happen, but probably without the pandemic, all of us could have still gone another decade, just using those tools that were at our disposition to continue numbing all of that stuff. And then what the pandemic did is that, all right, I'm going to cut everything out of your life. You're going to sit at home. You're going to sit with the people around you, whether that's a partner, your children. And now we're really going to see, do you like your life? Do you like what you're doing? Do you like who you are? No more distractions. Who are you? Just you. Can you tolerate who you are as well? And most people went fuck this shit. I can't do it anymore. And then the therapy, which was a good thing in the sense that it finally got people to look for real help. But also it's very sad to say that suicide rates also went up. It's also very sad to say that a lot of divorces happen because a lot of people realize that couple, it's not working out. And it's very interesting because for couples, it either brought people closer or it actually brought people further apart by sharing a house, by not having any distractions. You can't go out with your friends anymore and do all these things that you used to do, which are not bad things as well. But that numbness that we are very good at doing as humans in order to survive, and I really want to add that, people don't do that just, for the fun of it. It's a survival because it's too scary, it's too hard. Sometimes it's even too expensive to be able to do the other options. Wow. I mean, if you compare a session of therapy or a bottle of cheap vodka, it goes without saying, right? That the bottle of cheap vodka is way better and it'll do the trick for that moment.
And then a lot of people wonder why they're waking up the next day hungover, even feeling worse because they just introduced a substance that is a depressant into their already depressed situation. So that's tough. I find myself now putting the time frames together because I started numbing during the pandemic by getting into a super toxic relationship. And it looked so beautiful on the surface. Everybody thought that it was wow, this is so beautiful. They're so happy. And behind the scenes, it was a disaster. Wow. And so really what ended up happening had nothing to do with the other person, but that person was a mirror for things within myself that I had not yet addressed. And so when I was able to sit with those things, actually the pandemic, because I was in such close proximity, thank God I had the awareness where I was able to be oh wow, this is I'm tolerating this. I'm not setting boundaries. Why am I tolerating it? Well, maybe it's because I think that I deserve this, or maybe I think that I should accept this. And that was the biggest lie. So when I was able to address the core wounds of what was happening in the relationship and tie those back to the core wounds that had happened in my childhood, I said, holy shit, I'm literally dating my father.
There you go.
This is crazy.
There you go.
And it took a lot of introspection in order to determine that, and a lot of time with a therapist, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now I'm in an incredibly healthy relationship with someone that I normally wouldn't have even chosen because it didn't fit in line with my toxic pattern that I had been doing for 20 years.
It's interesting that you say that because I call this compatibility, but unhealthy compatibility. And we tend to think that, oh, we're a great match. But what is that match producing? Is it producing beauty, love, healthiness, all of that? Or is it actually producing toxicity and poison? And we are of this mind that if it fits, then it must be right. And when you think about toxic relationships, a lot of the time you'll have someone that is a giver and then you have someone that is a taker. Yeah, obviously when you put those two together, it's going to be an amazing match.
For a while.
But what does it produce? It's an amazing match. Here's a giver, here's a taker. They fit in perfectly, just like two pieces of a puzzle. But the image that it produces is very ugly. It's very toxic. It's poisonous. It's not equal. It's very draining for one person and it's very entitled for another person. So this idea of compatibility being the only instrument, to almost evaluate the goodness of a relationship, that's incorrect because unhealthy compatibility exists. Now, if you look at that compatibility, you go, oh, fine, we are compatible, but what are we producing? How are we coming out of this relationship? How am I feeling? Am I feeling great and complete and I'm becoming even a better version of myself? Or or actually it's the complete
Or
opposite.
anxiety and trauma and drama.
Trauma. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So I think a lot of people find themselves in that pattern. We did a previous episode on the drama triangle or the victim
Yeah.
triangle.
Yeah.
We were talking about being the victim, the persecutor, the rescuer, and like wherever you fall in one of these corners ended up being just a culmination of drama.
Yeah.
And the only way to get out of that circle or triangle rather is to put in place boundaries.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what we find is our boundaries are, I literally can't be with this person or I can't be around them. And I think on another level, there's a lot of men and women, for instance, that continue to go through this cycle because they don't have the strength to be able to not only set the boundary, but more importantly, to uphold the boundary. Because if you are a giver or a codependent and you're with a taker or what most people consider a narcissist, then you're in a situation where if you do set a boundary and you don't uphold it, they're going to think you're even weaker. They're going to step on you even more, and you've lost all respect. So it just ends up being even worse.
It's very difficult because, and that's why I'm so obsessed by them. Relationships are so interesting because if you take like an egg white, on its own, it's an ingredient. And if you put it with sugar, and sugar as well on its own, it's an ingredient. When you put them together under very specific circumstances, it can literally create a meringue, which you look at both of these ingredients and you're like, how did this create that? And that's why I'm always obsessed with these relationships and these dynamics, because anywhere that you put that egg white will create something different. Anywhere that you put that sugar, it will create something different. Put those two together, okay, it created that. Put those two together and under different circumstances, it will also create something else. So by understanding the uniqueness of these mixes, of these dynamics, you then can understand so much about how people operate on an individual level, but also on a very social level. When you were talking about drama, it's very interesting to tell you that a lot of people that don't have drama in their life will label their life as boring. Will tell you, I feel the need for drama because otherwise that like kind of steadiness is very boring. I rather go for the up and down and up and down and up and down.
I've had someone tell me that before. They're like, this is too boring because it's like there's no drama, there's no fighting.
Yeah. Maybe it will surprise you that to tell you that I was actually one of those people, a very long time ago, where my relationship at the moment with my husband, we've been together for 11 years. There was a point in our relationship where I unconsciously was creating drama out of like nothing. But when I say drama, it wasn't too crazy, but it was like, I'll pick up a fight out of the blue, or I'll, just like some stuff that I really didn't realize what it was until I actually went into my own therapy years later. And I said that, I'm like, there's just something about the drama that is like a peak in like an intensity. And then fine, the down is bad, but think about it. When you're so low, any getting a bit higher is going to feel good. Yeah. It's like a lot of people
like
that
addiction.
Actually, it is an addiction, but it's like self-harm. You have a lot of people that self-harm. Let's say if we use cutting, for instance, that will cut themselves, and that's painful. But the fact that there's the removal of a pain, that feels good. And that's what they go for. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So all these different feelings that we as humans try to get a hold of, we are so desperate basically to feel something. And that's what I was trying to say at the time. I wasn't conscious of that. My way of expressing it was like, oh, I want more drama because no drama is boring, let's say. I mean, I've never said it like that, but you see what I mean? When in reality, if what I'm really saying is, I want to feel something.
Wow.
How different is that? When I realize that actually I want to feel something, and in order to feel something, I'm going for these fights, for these random things that I'm going to create, for this unhealthy behavior here and there. It's just to feel something. All right, so if the real reason here is that I'm missing a feeling, I'm wanting to connect with something, now that I understand that actually it has to do with me and me, it has nothing to do with my partner. My therapist's favorite sentence is like, leave him alone. It has nothing to do with him. This is something about between you and you. You are desiring a connection with yourself. You don't know how to get that. You don't know how to get that feeling. So you are going into the outside world and you're trying to use other people, food, shopping, whatever it is, to try and experience something within.
Wow.
Everything in my life changed from that moment on, because I'm like, wait, I actually don't need to... attend to all of my cravings in order to feel something, because that's just a tool, that's an accessory, it's here, but it doesn't, I need to work harder to still get to that feeling without using these easier tools, right? And that's where like when I say work on myself, it meant like sitting in silence, trying to understand who's asking for something now inside of me, who's craving something inside. Because drama, by the way, is a craving. Whenever we create drama, it's because we have a craving, whether it's a craving for attention, craving for a feeling, craving for some sort of intensity, a bodily sensation. It's a craving. So how can I now attend to my cravings without going for all these fights or without going for these toxic behaviors? But again, how would I know that if I hadn't been in therapy?
So let's say that you're someone who finds yourself in that sensation or the need, which a lot of people I'm sure will. What's the step number one? Like, what's a useful step that someone can say, hey, I'm that person. I'm always craving something, whether it's food or alcohol or sweets or whatever, or maybe it is drama with a significant other. What's the first step to getting out of that?
Well, first of all, the awareness of it is very important, because the moment that I realize that, bam, there's a breakup that happens. I break myself from this. I'm not a slave to these cravings anymore. I understand these cravings. I'm like, wait, when I'm craving that, let's say, bar of chocolate, I know that it has nothing to do with that bar of chocolate. I now know that. So the first step is like to dissociate that craving with that. And literally the sentence is, it has nothing to do with this person or with this bar of chocolate or with this wanting to go to the gym for the third time in a day. Let's say it has nothing to do with that. So by disempowering the object, that's your first step when you take a step back, when you're like, wait, has nothing to do with the object. Okay, wait, so if it has nothing to do with the object, it has something to do with something else. So now I'm in the quest of finding what this thing is. What is the real craving here? When I say therapy, it's because in therapy, that's where this exploration happens. Obviously, being with a good therapist that's going to be able to do that exploration with you. But in that exploration, you go back a bit into childhood. And why do you go back into childhood? Is because usually cravings are needs, emotional needs that have not been met. So you're still craving for something. You're still craving for some love. Maybe it's love, maybe it's attention, maybe it's validation. Maybe it's a physical need as well. You haven't been, your physical need has not been met. And as a result, your body is always in alert mode. And so being able to do this exploration, to be able to identify what this craving is, then this is where the real work happens, is the healing part. Now that I know that it's my own, let's say, inner child, which I can get more into, but when I know that my real craving is the younger me that was not given enough love in this specific situation, then the work is a lot on the imagery, where I go back to her and I am the parent to that inner child. I now give her everything that she was not given at that specific age. So this is where I say beautiful words to her. This is where I hug her. And when I say this, it's like, I know it sounds weird, right? Because she's not here physically. I know that she's here. She's somewhere here. She's probably right in the back being like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, this is so massive. And she's probably super proud of me, right?
Yeah.
And that's a relationship that I've had to foster, because for the longest time, she was never there. She's always been there, but I've never really seen her. I now understand that she's everywhere with me. But that is through a lot of work. Sitting in silence, by the way, is one of the most important things when you want to work on yourself. The reason for it is because when you sit in silence and you just sit with yourself, the moment, and I do this by closing my eyes because I find this helpful, the moment that I close my eyes, I now am entering a world where there are a lot of different components to who I am. And now I can actually start dealing with all of them, start attending to all of them. So this is what I would do. It's work.
It is work.
It's work, but it's the work that is worth doing the most.
Yeah, that's great. I've found a lot of positive changes from like sitting with my inner child as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me about them.
Well, I think, I had, for sure, my inner child felt kind of alone, abandoned, bullied, just like he didn't belong, he didn't fit in, and that he wasn't good enough. Yeah. And whether that was because he had been told that or because he genuinely felt that from one reason or another, that was almost the identity that he took on.
Yeah.
And so I always wondered why through grade school, through high school, even not so much in college, but my younger years, I always found difficulty finding friends. I was bullied a lot because I allowed a lot of that stuff because I internally thought that that was me. Like I deserved this. And then when I got to college, it was more so like I'm partying. I'm like, I started gaining popularity. I became the president of my fraternity. And for me, I found satisfaction or fulfillment in a part of me that was never met through the external validations. Then I get on Instagram and I started posting. I started working out, posting my shirtless pics and out there thirst trapping and getting like kind of getting my validation again through social media or the external world until kind of like that reality popped. I realized like nobody out there can give me the love that I've been craving. So I'm always going to be searching for it. Even if I find an incredible partner, which I did when I was in college, I wasn't able to move forward with her because she wanted something that I felt like I didn't deserve or I wasn't even able to provide. And so I didn't know any of this. I'm just like aimlessly going through life wondering why shit keeps happening, right? And why it's never enough and why I feel like I'm never enough. And so what I had to do was when I went through therapy, I sat there with my inner child through like this visualization exercise. And I was like talking to him and I was like, my inner child's so cute. Like he's such a cute kid. And when I sat with him, I was able to show him love and be like, hey, you know, this stuff that you believe is not true. You can be yourself. You can be authentic. You can show support for others. You can get support. You can ask for support even, and you deserve to receive that. And you should be open enough to go ask for it or to be just open for it. And so when I was able to talk to my inner child, it's crazy because something like rewires almost. And
that's the point.
And as it rewires, all of a sudden you start seeing things and events and people and different associations change through your life almost like instantaneously. You'll cut people off and not even care because you're like, I don't want to be around this person. This person doesn't fit in line with my values. And that's okay.
That's the really important part, is that I'm okay with that. I listen to what you have to say. I mean, as you can see, I'm smiling a lot, which in therapy, I wouldn't be like that. If someone like is telling me but you, it's because you're coming at it from a place that you've done the work. You've gone through this journey. You're still going through this journey.
I don't think it ever ends.
It never ends. It should never end. No. How sad would it be if it ended? If you were just a finished product. Horrible. It makes me so happy. And also very sad when so it makes me very happy to know that you've done this, that you are doing this. It makes me so sad, like what you were saying, that a lot of people walk through life, most people walk through life without having the awareness with their emotions, their insecurities, their unprocessed stuff, controlling their behavior. And most importantly, just not having gotten all the potential that they could get in becoming the person that they're supposed to come. And for me, potential is so important because if I have that much potential, but it's all covered up with my insecurities, with my traumas, with my unprocessed stuff, with my need for validation, my need to prove something, I'm not tapping into this potential. This potential that I have is now being wasted on just having to prove to myself all the time through other people that I'm okay, that I'm good enough, that I'm all these things. But that potential, put it into the right places. When I'm done chasing people for that validation, and now I can use that potential into the right places, that's the gold. That's really the gold. And when I look at people going through life, not having that space to be able to create that, to remove all that shadow around my own, my potential, I'm really, really sad. And that's exactly why I created Journey. That's exactly why we're working so hard. Everybody tells you startups work like really, really hard. It's crazy the amount of time that we're putting into this with no money, with no resources, but we're on to something. The mission is generally not to get everybody in therapy. That's not, and I think people are like, oh, I don't need to be it's not about, therapy is a space. It's a space. It's like if I told you like everybody needs to be fit, and going to the gym and classes is one of those places where you can do that, and it's like there's a whole structure around it. It's easier. That doesn't mean that you need to get there. For me, Journey is also not just about getting people into therapy. It's journey is here to accompany you through your whole journey. Whether it's matching you with someone, whether it's giving you all the right recommendation and resources to be able to do some of the work on your own, whether it's, even this podcast, that's something that's going to go in there as well, where we just explain some of our own experiences through therapy. That's the goal. The goal is for people to realize that we don't have to go on like that. We don't have to continue like that. And what we're all doing, most of us that will go through life in this unaware way, that haven't done the work. It's very sad what I'm going to say, but we live life needing, not wanting, needing to prove something to someone all the time. All the time. Just to get that, yeah, you're good enough. But it's short-lived, it's very small, and it depends on other people. How sad is it that the only way for me to feel worthy of anything is if someone else gives me that validation? And we spend our whole life chasing that. Because fair enough, we need to feel it. We need to feel it. But I've given that power to other people because that's how I've been brought up, by thinking that only other people can give that to me.
Wow.
So we end up spending our whole life just needing to prove something, proving that we're good enough, proving, even when you were saying like I became president of my fraternity, part of me is like, yeah, well done. But the other part of me is like, but I know what the real intention probably behind that was. It's like, look, I am actually good enough. I am popular. I really have it in me to be a leader, or there's always something that we need to prove.
Yeah.
And I think that's the last thing I would say just about that. I think a lot of people think that if you heal that, you lose all of your motivation. That if I don't need to prove something to anybody, like, and again, I think I'm a good example in that there was a time where I really wanted to prove that, like, I was great, I was perfect in a lot of things. And when I removed that, I actually calmed down, where I'm like, wait, I don't need to go around and like do all these videos on Instagram, let's say, or I don't need to make more money, or I don't need to do that because I'm feeling good enough within. This was the short-term thing. But then what it created is real purpose.
Wow.
Is real mission. And that's when Journey came in. I woke up from a dream. I think you listened to it I woke up from a dream, and I'm like, oh my God, everything felt just like aligned, like an opening. It's like, this is it. Now I'm more motivated than I could have ever been, but I'm doing it for the right reasons. I'm not doing it so that people can go like, oh, well done, Nicole.
Exactly. Great.
That's bonus points. I'm not going to say I don't care about that stuff and the money obviously we still care, and I really care, but I know that my intention is in the right place. I'm not interested in doing just any business that's going to bring money. That's not the point. I want to do what I was meant to do. And that's exactly what I'm meant to do. But that only came when I like cleaned all that shit up,
I agree. That's huge. I appreciate you sharing that, because I feel like I am on the tail end of going through something similar.
Yeah.
When I finished this retreat that I went on for a year, I realized I was like, I don't even want to post on Instagram, because like, for what?
Yeah.
And
don't need it anymore.
I had to, because that's how I get my business. All of my business is driven through social media. So if I'm not consistent with my posts, if I'm not reaching out to my agents, if I'm not creating flyers for my stories, if I'm not giving them market updates, they're not going to send me business. So I have to do that. But I didn't even want to, because I'm like, all I have ever posted is me in front of houses I don't own, me in front of nice cars that I'm renting, me in front of all these different things to try to seek validation. Yeah. And I was like, I don't really need that. Like, I don't give a shit if somebody likes me or doesn't like me. It just doesn't matter. They're irrelevant. Their opinion is irrelevant. So I stopped posting. I stopped recording. I stopped doing the pod. I was like, why was I doing the pod to begin with? It was just because I wanted likes and views. Well, my videos aren't getting those. I don't care. I'm not going to do it anymore. And what I realized through that was, as I spent more time with myself, I realized it has nothing to do with the likes. It has nothing to do with getting more business. How can I impact someone else? So what I ended up doing was starting the studio, because the studio had to pay for itself because I wasn't utilizing it anymore. And I started doing the men's group, which has been incredible. And there were all these other things that came to me through breathwork sessions that I was just like, wow, like I should be doing this, because it's in line with my purpose, which is to help others and to give them the resources that they need in order to do that for themselves. And so I'm now in a position where on the tail end of those feelings, I'm like, wow, what can I post? What can I do? What actions can I take that are going to get me closer to that purpose?
Yeah.
And now is where the real work begins, because you have to be intentional about everything now.
Yeah.
Whereas
Very
before, it's almost harder now, because before I could mindlessly go through life posting shit for likes.
Yeah.
And now I have to be intentional about what am I going to post and what's behind it and what's the intention.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's not like it gets easier. However, I can say that the feeling that comes from the things that we take action on now has such a deeper impact in the lives of others and within ourselves that it's not so temporary. We're not looking for the next dopamine hit. We're not posting because we need the next 2,000 people to like our photo. Yeah. We're doing it because, wow, I feel really good that somebody messaged me and said, hey, dude, like I've been struggling with something and that really helped me.
That's a success story.
Right. And then that feels good. Yeah. That's true impact. Yeah. The reason I brought up the men's group is because this past Saturday, I had a guy, the whole session ended up being about him, because he was like the third person going around the circle to share. And he was just like, guys, I haven't told anybody this, but I felt so bad about myself because I tried to kill myself 5 months ago and it didn't work. And my little sister found me. Oh. You know, and he was like, how do I have that conversation? And we're all in tears, all the guys. And that's why I created that space, so that men can open up. And he had never shared this with anyone. And we're all sitting there, we're supporting him, we're listening to his story, we're sharing space. But he's like, I've been holding this in for 5 months. I haven't told anybody. I haven't even talked to my family about it. And everybody's tiptoeing on eggshells. Nobody wants to mention it. And we encouraged him to go have that conversation with his family. And he did. And he said, like, everything is different now, because he had that conversation finally, and he doesn't feel those emotions. I'm sure they creep back in every once in a while, but he's now on a journey where he's in recovery from being the old him and stepping into a new version of himself. And that's why it is so important to share. It's so important. There's so much healing potential. There's so much impact just in sharing your story, just in getting it out. And if it happens to be with a therapist or a best friend or a family member or whomever, the fact is just getting it out releases the power that it held.
I'll tell you what's the biggest problem with men, most men, is that they really, really, really believe in self-reliance. That's it. They believe that
I can do it all on my own.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's very sad, because this has probably been the message for a very long time, that especially in like a bit more traditional cultures and communities where, you know, you're it. It's like, if you're not there, the family's not eating, we don't have a roof over our heads. Like you're it. So now everything is on you. And then we are here, the rest of the family, whether it's the wife, the children, the society, is here to like assist in you know, just making things a bit better. So like you bring the roof, okay, fine, I'll make it into a home, but you brought that. If it wasn't for, so this whole idea that men really, really depend on their own selves and truly believe that it's all on them, that they can't outsource in that kind of way. And I think it's an illusion, almost a delusion, to think that we can go through life in an independent way. And when I say this, I don't mean like, obviously, like, you know, I think I'm quite independent, but I'm independent within a very dependent space. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. I need people around me so I can offload and share and connect with. I need people around me that create things that I'm also going to use in order for me to become more successful. And all of us, that's what I meant by the human experience before. We are all dependent creatures. That's our nature as humans. Now, in our dependency, there are some places in our lives that we want to be independent, fair enough. But what is this lie that we're supposed to be self-reliant all the time? And man, that's where the failure comes in for them, is that I wasn't able to do it all on my own. What do you mean you're supposed to do it all on your own? Like, no one is supposed to do it all on their own. Yeah. No one's living, I don't know. I mean, some people are living like in a farm, very secluded from everybody else. They probably, but they're probably, you know, bonding with animals. And if it wasn't also for the animals around them, they wouldn't be able to do it. But when you have people, and I find it so fascinating, when you have people that like live in London, New York, Miami, these really big cities that are meant to be codependent, and then
they're living in isolation.
Yeah, you live in isolation in a space that is shared with everybody. look at that contradiction. Doesn't make sense. So when you're telling me stories like that, I'm like, again, how sad is it that the option of just disappearing seems even more legit than the option of maybe I shouldn't be doing this on my own. Maybe I'm not meant to go through all these experiences. If you look at social media, remove everything that is like garbage and useless and just for entertainment. Fine, remove that. The whole point of social media, the social media's true mission is to feel connected.
Yeah.
To feel like you're not supposed to do this. Life has gotten a lot harder. Emotions are a lot more intense. We are the result. Every generation that comes after us is going to be harder than the one that came before us, unless we actually do the work and stop a lot of those traumas. But it's really, really, really hard. How are you supposed, as a human that has a brain that does X, Y, and Z, how are you supposed to handle it all? We can't. We're not supposed to be able to do all these things. And whoever tells you that you're supposed, and I find it, by the way, I'm interrupting my own self, but I'm finding it very interesting how, I'll see my grandfather say something like that to like my cousins, or you're supposed to, to be man enough to be able to handle it on your own. But my granddad doesn't have the exposure that my brother has.
Yeah.
My granddad is not exposed to all these emotions that are happening worldwide. When he was growing up, he knew what was happening around his town. That was about it. Fine, there was like probably a World War II that was happening around his town, but he would hear about it. He wouldn't see it. He wouldn't be exposed to it. He wouldn't feel the need to also do something about it in that same way. His focus was very much on his family, around, the people around him, and his job.
His focus was in something that he could control. Whereas now you have so many people, there's so much news, we're being bombarded. During COVID, going back to the pandemic, I stopped watching the news. I have not watched the news since the pandemic because I found it was putting me in a state of depression.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's intended to do. It's selling you fear.
Yeah.
And
sadness.
And sadness, right? And so to an extent, we have to focus on what we can control. And if we're too focused on things that we can't, it will create depression. It will create anxiety. It will create fear, and it'll cause us to move in a particular direction that we may not want to be in, and also is not conducive to anything healthy in our lives. The accountability is huge. And I think as men in particular, we have to hold ourselves accountable. And somebody told me something, it was in one of my therapy sessions, where I had so much rage towards my father unknowingly. And what they told me was, they said, look at your dad and just pretend like you're talking to like just like you look at your inner child, pretend you're talking to his inner child. Like you're just looking at a little child version of him. And when he had his rage sessions, he was just a little kid that was scared or angry or having a temper tantrum, just having a fit. And when I looked at him from that view, I was like, he's just a child. He's having a temper tantrum and he doesn't even know what he's saying. And there's so many people in the world, when we look at them and they're going off, it's like, if we can look at them as little children, we can see that, wow, this person is just, they're not feeling loved. They were told a story, or they were told to feel a certain way, and they took that on as their own, and it might not even be their own. As we're seeing around the world with a 2,000-3,000 year old situation that's again happening, right?
Yeah.
And I really do like the inner child exercises, where it's like, wow, we're not just looking at ourselves as little children, we're looking at others as little children. If we can look at them with compassion while still keeping accountability for ourselves and others, we can set healthy boundaries. We know when we need to walk away. We know when we need to confront. We know how to have particular conversations that may be uncomfortable, but then how to address those in a positive way that's going to have a positive outcome.
What's very interesting when you do that exercise is that your interaction then changes completely when, especially if you are an adult, when you decide to parent this kid. And then I'll give you this example. I have a lot of clients that really hate children, not hate, but like really dislike them, really like, fine, they've decided that they don't want to have children of their own, that's absolutely fine, but they really don't like being in the presence of children. The moment that they say this, I'm like, bam, we found it. Tell me about you when you were a kid.
Tell
me about,
I think I struggle with this.
a lot of people can't stand children because they can't stand themselves as children. It has nothing to do with the kids around them. I had a client, she said, I don't even know what to do with them. As if like, and I'm like, what do you mean what to do with them? Like, it's a human. It's like, fine. Like you may have to play, you may have to like, the cognitive level is like, is different, but what do you mean what to do with them? You do the exact same thing that you do with your friends, and you just like hang around and have a conversation. And they were like, no. And they make me uncomfortable. How can one entity that small bring so much out from you, out of you? And that's when we really get into like the inner child work. And then you start realizing that they have such a bad relationship with their own selves at that age. They don't like who they were. They don't, feel any love or compassion for them. And the same applies for the opposite. Then you have people that love children. I had a client, she once said that she can't wait. She's in her beginning 20s. She can't wait to have her own kids. And I said, why? She said, because I want to give them this and that, and I want to speak about that topic with them. All she was saying was just things that her parents didn't do with her. And she wanted to have those children to be able to do that with them, as if having children is going to heal that part of her. And then I'm like, you have to stop right there. You should never get children. You should never have children. And this is what, by the way, a lot of people do. Have children in order to repair something inside. Because what you're going to do is do the complete opposite. You're going to put your own insecurities, your own projection into these children, when that child might actually need something completely different. Give you a classic example. If a father was neglected by his father and was never given attention, then this father is going to overcompensate on their children and then give them too much attention and be like too involved in things that maybe the child doesn't even want to be part of. But and
then they're going to feel like they never had a choice. And then it's like,
there you go.
Wow. But then it's like overcorrecting.
That's it.
When you start veering off the road, a lot of people make the mistake of they overcorrect the wheel and then they start spinning in the other direction.
Very true. Very true.
Instead of just letting the wheel go and it course corrects itself and then you can go straight down the road.
Very true. But the thing, to come back to the accountability, it's really hard because, even in sessions, I see it so much where you have a client that is very angry at their parents, but then we do that exercise of understanding and see them as a child. And then they sometimes get even angrier because it's like, well, now I know that it wasn't their fault, but I still have anger. Where do I put that in?
And who do I blame?
Who do I blame? Because they still did something wrong. And that's where we work a lot on the coexistence of these two things. You can be understanding and compassionate towards them as that, but also be angry that they projected that onto you. These two things can coexist together, and you don't have to cancel one or the other, but it's hard.
That's great. Well, let me ask you, because a lot of the things that we've just been discussing can seem a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because I think this sounds horrible, but if I were to look back at all of the work that I did, all the money I invested and all the time that I invested in healing and going to therapy and going on retreats and doing these things, I'm like, honestly, it sucked, but it was like a lot easier to just live blindly the way that I was living than have to know all of the shit that I know now and have to repair it or just realize that I'm not going to progress. And sometimes it may almost seem easier for someone to be like, oh, I should just like continue being the way that I'm being. But what I've realized is you're always going to get what you've always gotten if you don't make a change now. So what's like a really easy and practical thing that someone can do to start making the change, to get some understanding, to gain a little bit of wisdom and awareness on the things that they're dealing with without feeling like they're jumping into the deep end and they have to do so many different things without getting overwhelmed?
I think it's a very good point because yeah, financially it's a big investment.
Sure.
Emotionally, it's a really massive investment. All of it, right?
And it's uncomfortable.
And it's hard. Like it's really, really hard. Imagine you have to go for a whole full hour, talk about stuff that you don't want to.
That you've been pushing away for years.
For years. And I always tell my clients, it gets worse before it gets better. Yeah. And the reason for it is, so you have to imagine, if you're here in the middle, your whole life, you've built these like massive concrete walls to keep like all the fire or water away, right? But what really usually brings you to therapy, when we talked about your story, that people get to a point where the water starts dripping.
Overflowing,
Yeah, overflowing. And that usually comes in the form of anxiety, depression, even like symptoms like OCD, obsessiveness, just or physically you start being like very stressed, you have aches everywhere. That's the water overflowing. Then you come to therapy and you're like, the water is overflowing. And then I go in as a therapist and I'm like, okay, let's look at these walls. This is not the right material. You've used something that is not for long term. You did the best that you could with the resources that you had at the time. And that I praise, because that's survival. That's smart. You're very smart. Because had you not done that, you would have drowned a very long time ago. So you're very smart. Well done for having done that all these years. But now it's time for us to agree. And I would say that's the first step, regardless of you being in therapy, for you to agree that that way of doing doesn't work anymore. And it's not because it's the only way that you know how, that it is the only option out there. It's not. So many different options.
Yeah.
But it's the one that you are the most familiar with. It's the one that you've invented. Yeah, fine, fair enough. But the first bit is to acknowledge that these two walls, that's not it. That won't get you very far. Okay. Then what we usually do in therapy is we start breaking those walls. Now, what's going to happen when you break those walls and there's all this water? And that's the uncomfortable bit.
Yeah.
Where they get like very stressed, they get very overwhelmed. Sometimes they get even more depressed during that time. It's normal.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, we're facing things that you've spent your whole life trying to avoid. It's going to be hard. But then what you need to realize is that after that like massive splurge, it's going to calm down, because some of the stuff that you've constructed is good, like friends, like your job, like there are some things that you've done in these walls that are good. For now, it's time for us to pick and choose what we keep and what kind of a system we create. One, for the water to not come out in these kind of ways, but also what's the protection that we're going to give to ourselves. One of the things that we need to do, which is hard, it's to learn how to accept emotions, because life, society, capitalism has always told you that you need to get rid of anything that is bad. Any discomfort, you need to get rid of. That's not true. You need to sit through it because it's going to pass. If you try to avoid it, or if you try to repress it, you're just storing it somewhere else. You have to go through it. It's like a wave. I don't know if you've ever been, there's a beach just right there. If there's a massive wave, you can either, if you want to go forward, and there are waves, there's a massive wave, you can either see it and just like run back to the shore and never get it, or that's the uncomfortable feeling. If you want to go forward, you go through the wave. And yes, when you'll go through the wave, you'll probably I'll give you my example because I have very long hair. You'll like turn around, you'll have like hair and sand in your mouth. It'll feel super uncomfortable, sometimes even scary. You're like, will I ever be able to like breathe again? This is such a big wave. But then once that wave passes, which is very uncomfortable, then when it passes, you're like, oh, okay, I'm good. It's done. Now I can continue moving forward. But when people are always avoiding the uncomfortable feeling, you never go forward. And that's, by the way, that's comfort. That's where we say being in a comfortable place can sometimes be dangerous.
But it's also, the comfort zone is typically dysfunctional. Because like that, I know I want to go forward but I know I have to go through this wave, but I don't want to go through the wave. So I'm going to go back to the shore, and you're always living in this state of limbo. And it's very discomforting. However, it is comfortable. So it's pick your heart, right?
Pick your heart.
Pick your heart.
And pick your battle. Sometimes people I have a client at the moment, she's had a lot of trauma. Now it's the time for her to be in a comfortable place where her fight or flight response is lowered. She needs to find that comfortable place. So it's a game, right? It's not a game, but like it's an art. You need to know how to play it around. But a lot of the time when people are going through stuff like that, it's because change needs to happen, but people are so afraid of change. So to go back to your initial question, even if it's not going to therapy and all these retreats and all, just sit down and acknowledge that something has to change. This holds so much power. If you go to these AA meetings, what's the first thing that they have to say?
They have to admit that they have a problem. It's an awareness piece.
That's it.
Yeah. You've taken its power away from having a hold on you.
Yeah.
And you've given power back to yourself to say, yeah, I have a problem, or something's going on, and I want to change. And what I've found is, as you have the desire, now you'll start seeking out solutions.
Yeah.
So that's great.
And those solutions, a lot of the time, if you listen carefully, a lot of these solutions will come to you. A lot of these resources will come to you. I mean, as simple as cookies. Cookies will do a lot of the work for you. If you just write, like, even if you just are looking or spending, a couple of seconds more on one post that actually talks to you, you'll see. Instagram will do its thing. You'll start getting like some recommendations. But first, acknowledge that it's a thing. Acknowledge the fact that you want change. Acknowledge the fact that it's going to be hard, and start step by step. And by the way, that's something that we're doing at Journey. When you follow our page, every week we give recommendations, whether it's book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a meditation that we really like, a post that we enjoy, something that is telling, information, education. Like,
that's great.
That's the whole point, is that not a lot of people want to do the therapy work. They can't, they don't want to, they're not ready. Fine, fair enough. It can't be the only solution. That would be very sad.
Yeah.
That would be very sad. I think it's great. I always compare it to, like, a therapist is like, you want to get in shape and you decide to hire a PT, a personal trainer. You can still get in shape without a PT. Might be harder. You might lack the motivation. There would be no one's really there, holding you accountable. Maybe something that you thought was going to work on your body, actually you need something else. So you're hiring someone to come and be there with you on that journey. But you can still take that journey on your own. It's a bit harder. Not gonna lie, it's a bit harder. You might get lost along the way. A lot of your own self-reflections are quite bad. And take it from me. I'm a psychologist, and a lot of my own self-reflection are just obscured by my own biases, by my own projection. So I very rarely, nowadays anyway, I very rarely try to self-analyze. My therapy space is very sacred for me because I have a space where I can do that. But if not, therapy is one thing, but everything that happens in between my sessions is the most important stuff. And that is listening to podcasts, reading books that like speak to my soul. For me, my journey has been a very spiritual journey. It was a very, I've never, I was raised Christian, but I don't practice in a Christian way because that doesn't resonate with me. But my spirituality is so important. So what I do is that, I take the words of Jesus, of Muhammad, of Buddha, of like whatever resonates with me. And what you'll anyway realize that most of them say the same thing anyway, which is very much a message of love. But I take my spirituality and I work with it. I am enriching my soul, however that comes across. Oprah's podcast is wonderful. I generally believe that a lot of the good things that have happened in my life are because of Oprah's podcast. Super Soul. I don't know if she has any other podcast, but what she's done is she's combined these great spiritual leaders. And she's put them into one big library. And they all say the same thing in a different way with a different experience. And that's beautiful. And sometimes, for me, the word God, I've replaced it with the word universe. Because that works for me. That's what I resonate with. Now, when I listen to one of these podcasts, I don't go, oh no, they're talking about God and I don't believe in God. Who cares? Take whatever you need to take from anything. And sometimes, I listen to podcasts, I'm like, there wasn't anything for me there, but I still learned something. There wasn't anything that like resonated with my soul. Some people will only talk in the name of Jesus and God, and that works for. It doesn't matter. We're all on that same. The intention is the same. To be better, to feel better, to be connected with the beyond. Like that's the important bit for me. And had I tried to do this, I was in therapy years before when I was doing my PhD. It was a very different journey. It was more a journey of like connecting on a more professional level and understanding who I was on like a more superficial level. And this is how much I was able to do at the time, right? So your readiness to tap into things is very, very personal.
And it's always changing.
And it should.
Yeah.
Because you are evolving, yeah. Had someone told me about, I don't know, the universe and spirituality 10 years ago, I'd be like, okay, yeah, thank you. I probably, yeah, I was a lot more just following, you know, that religion that I was raised as, just because it's what I knew, you know. But now it's different. Maybe in 10 years' time, it will be different. That's the thing, is that just give your inner self the mic.
That's great.
Give your inner self the mic.
Everybody's got a mic these days.
Literally.
But not everybody's worth listening to.
True.
And if we can give our inner self the mic, I think we often know what we need.
Yeah.
Innately.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah. I'll give you just this example. I told a client of mine, every night before you go to sleep, imagine, like, close your eyes and you're now entering the board of your company, which is you. And in that board, you're the chairman of that board. And in that boardroom, everybody's sitting there. Your optimistic side, your pessimistic side, your jealous side, your child, your vulnerable side, your inner child. Everybody is sitting around that table. And someone today went crazy. All right, jealousy, you were on fire today. What was going on? Why did that person, their success, you were not able to celebrate it? It actually triggered jealousy. Is that because you want it? All right. Well, can't you want it and still be happy for that person? Okay, it felt threatening. All right. What part of you was threatened? You ask them, you give them the mic. But when I do that, I realize that it's not, I am divided. We all are. And we tend to forget that. We think it's one person. It's like enmeshed to one entity. The goal of that exercise is to realize that you as a single person are made of many different sides. And you have to give them the mic.
Yeah.
To understand what's going on.
I love that. The shadows board meeting. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. I have a little angry one that gets up every time I'm behind the wheel of the car. He comes out
There you go.
and he starts running the show.
There you go.
Wow. I really love that analogy. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I really wanted to end on would be talking about journey.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk about journey, how you came up with the concept. I really love the idea of you putting people into a position where they're being matched with the perfect therapist combination, right?
Perfect is a big word, yeah, but with the right person. Listen, good therapy, good coaching session, it's compatibility. Here we really are talking about compatibility. I'm not talking about two people that have the same character. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying compatibility, someone that that your character, your personality matches with, and you're going to respond to, you're going to relate to. And that's something that is very much missing in today's world with a lot of our competitors as well. And what I realized is that and this was really during the pandemic, a lot of people would come to me to ask me for recommendations, which is fair enough. If you know a therapist, if we've met in a bar and someone asks me, what do you do? And I say, oh, by the way, I'm looking for a therapist. I'll be the human matchmaker.
Yeah.
Fine. 2 system of referrals that have worked throughout the last decades: word of mouth and a human matchmaker, someone that does that. And but what if you didn't meet me in that bar? What if we never met? What if you've never come across a therapist? What then does that mean? Just on Friday, I met someone, 3-minute conversation. Not convinced him. He's been convinced. He wants to do it. He just doesn't know where to go. I'm like, I have the right person for you. Starting their session on next Monday.
That's great.
But had I not gone to this party. And that's the really sad part for me, is that we can get so many people into that space that they are craving. I don't even need to convince people to come to therapy. They know that everybody's on, a lot of people nowadays are on that self-betterment journey. I want to create a tool where I match you with that right person. One of the ways that we do that is that every therapist on our platform has a video. It's a must. You don't have a video, we can't advertise you. I want people to pick up on that. And the way that it started is with my own story during the pandemic, where at some point, I remember February 2021, I was like, I need to start doing videos for Instagram, because that's in line with my mission. My mission is to raise awareness, to empower people. I have to be true to that. It wasn't to get clients. I didn't even know I was going to get clients. But I started doing these videos, in February. In December 2021, I left one of my jobs because in that 9 months time, I got 36 clients. Massive. Knowing that I had like not even 2,000 followers. So it's not that like I had nothing. But what I realized is that people are responding to my videos. A year before that, never posted a single video, never got any client. I was like, there's something about the videos. And it's not that like people saw my face, they knew what I looked like. I would post like a picture of two. So it wasn't that. But the videos, the way that I was talking, they connected.
Your voice, your
exactly.
Body language.
Exactly.
Tonality,
style, even like I would, you know, I don't shy away like from how I dress, my mannerism, my rings, people connect with all these things. And that's what I want people to see in their practitioners, because the trial and error process is so high in the world of therapy. How many people, and that's such a classic story, you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to go to therapy. I Google therapist in Miami, get filled with pages. Okay, fine, I'll check out a couple of websites. Oh, okay, I'll judge compatibility.
And then the story is, I tried it, therapy doesn't work.
Because they realize that, they picked someone based on a picture and a small biography. We're all saying the same thing. We're not judgmental. We are empathic. Like, we're all saying the same stuff. And we all have a nice picture fine of us, of, smiling and being quite warm.
Yeah.
Sometimes, a picture will like say something, but you need more. Then they go to therapy. They try it out. First session, okay, if they're fine. It's not, I'll try again and I'll try again. Usually, you'll try 3-4 sessions, then you lose interest, you stop it. You lose interest even in the process of finding someone, because that was hard. And believe me, you don't wake up one day and you're like, oh, I need therapy. Okay, let me go and search for someone. And that lasts an hour. Usually it's like months, if not a year.
Of course.
Maybe I should go to therapy. Yeah, maybe. Okay. And then, you leave it for like another 2 months. So I'm aware of that. And I want to remove that. It's like, it's too much work for something that may or may not work. I want to give you that kind of certainty. That's what I want to do. And to tell you the truth, a lot of practitioners, they don't know how to advertise themselves. And I don't blame them.
Yeah,
like,
I've seen that.
We studied
It
psychology.
might not be a skill set of theirs.
Exactly. We
Marketing
studied psychology, not marketing, for a reason.
I was just talking to someone, it wasn't about therapists, but she's like, I went to school all these years so that I could be incredible at what I do. It's not because I also wanted to pick up skill in marketing, graphic design, videography. She's like, I don't care about this. And she was like, but that's the truth of the world we live in now, is you have to be good at those things.
And how terrible.
Or you have to outsource them.
Exactly. And to outsource them, it's really
very
expensive. Now you have to have a website. You have to have an Instagram page. You have to be great with content. You have to know how to edit your videos. You also need to be invited to podcasts. And that's so much work.
It's so much work, I know.
It's so much work for someone that generally just wants to sit in their room, see clients and heal people. That's all that they want to do. So that's really our service. This is how we make money, is that we take a subscription off of practitioners, and what we do in exchange, we advertise them. We advertise them.
Huge.
And
so
the
you
best
take the
way that
legwork away from the practitioners having to do it for themselves.
So we don't create tailored websites.
Sure.
There's one place, there's one Instagram page, but that's it. We want to hear, what are your book recommendations? Write us an article about something that you're an expert in. We will post it on our blog. We'll do all that stuff for you.
That's great.
All you have to do is be yourself. Give us a 1-minute video, which now we're helping them do, and just connect with people. Concentrate on your best work. We'll do the rest.
That's great.
So that's what
I love that.
Yeah.
So from a client perspective,
Yeah.
What does it look like? Are they filling out a form? Are
a very
they
small questionnaire.
questionnaire, okay.
Small questionnaire. We gather some information about you. The questionnaire is going to change eventually, but we need money to do that. We need engineers to help us create this idea that we have in mind. But for the moment, it's a very small questionnaire. We ask basic questions. Then you find you'll match with a couple of practitioners. You screen them, you see who you like, you check out their videos, you contact them, and then you see if they're free, if you can see them. You don't do therapy on our platform. We're not interested in that, because every practitioner has a different way. I do my sessions on Skype, and I bill every last Friday of the month. I have another therapist. She does all of her sessions on Zoom, and she wants you to pay for all of her sessions after after every session. Everybody has a different style. I don't want to take that away from practitioners. It's part of their authenticity. So I want to leave that intact and give the autonomy fully to them. All we do is just create that connection, and then off you go. You do your business elsewhere.
Yeah.
That's how it is for now.
That's great.
And then our Instagram page is like our main resource, where you'll find the motivational stuff, you'll find the book recommendation, you'll find a lot of things. And we're here, as the name says it, we're here for your whole journey. This is not just a come in, come out kind of service. You're on a journey. You are deciding to do that for yourself. We're down. We're here for it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, I after we left last week, I texted one of my clients, someone that I really, really cherish. I've been seeing him for 4 years, and I texted him. He lives in London, and I said, I just met this guy, and I really, really, really wish you were living in Miami, because he's doing something incredible that you would be a great fit for, and that I know you would love. Because one of the things that he keeps on talking about is that there's no circle for men. It's not safe for men. It's not the same. Women speak to one another. They connect on different. There's nothing like that for men. And he's tried, to initiate some conversations with his friends, his friend groups. It doesn't pick up. And after I met you, I texted him and I'm like, I just wish you were in Miami to be able to come to one of his meetings, because I think a lot of men are craving that, and they're not getting it. And at the time I recommended podcasts, but it's not the same.
No, it's not.
It's not the same. So I want to thank you, because even when we met you last week, like, you saw my smile. You are for me a success story of what I'm trying to show people that can happen to them. So what you are doing for men is incredible. For mental health is even more, and that's coming from someone that didn't study that. So that holds even more weight than a psychologist going around telling people that they have to be in therapy. It holds very different when it's someone like you that says that. So yeah, I'm just very happy, and also very proud that someone like you,
Thank you.
And also of the profession of your therapist, for having created all of that, and just creating this alignment with you. It's something to be very proud of.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Well, mine came, the whole idea really came from my deepest, darkest moments, because as a man, I had nowhere to go, and I felt like I didn't have a space or a community that I could speak to. I spoke to a couple of my friends, but their advice was horrible. Yeah. And it was like, when I found myself in the midst of a terrible, toxic relationship, it was like, it would be easier just to end it. Like, those thoughts went through my mind a lot for like months. And I would often be like, how easy would it be to just drive off the Venetian right now, or drive off the Causeway? It would be a lot easier than having to go through this. But I can say with certainty that I'm so glad that I didn't take the easy way out, because there's so much power and strength and impact on the other side of taking the more difficult route. Yeah. And so one thing that I would leave people with is just like, choose the harder route, because it's often like our biggest impacts and our best days are on the other side of the things that we fear the most.
Yeah. And I'll just add to this, you had the energy to be able, even if it was little energy, you still had a bit of energy to go down that route. Unfortunately, a lot of people that have been flirting with the idea for far too long don't have that kind of energy. And this is where I highly, highly encourage the people around them that see them going through that, be proactive. Go look for a therapist. You go look for that help and get them. Get them, put them in therapy, wait in the waiting room with them, be in their house when they're doing the session.
Just be supportive.
Be supportive, but and like you said, to come back to before, sometimes they hide it so well.
They do.
People
I hid it so well. Everybody thought I was like
doing well, on top of your game.
Business is booming. I'm closing loans.
And that's why I'm saying, like,
you never know.
Self-reliance, come on, snap out of it. We all need people around us. It's unnatural to be so independent, and it's not attractive. It's like, come on, it's this whole connection and vulnerability and emotions and sensitivity, and that's nice. It's beautiful. It's like, it's a natural drug.
Yeah.
It's a natural drug.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And can you tell people where they could find you?
Yes. So I would try to look at the
Yeah,
camera.
just look at the camera.
So you can find us. So our website is journeystartshere.com, and our Instagram page is also Journey Starts Here.
Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. We certainly appreciate you being here, supporting our channel. And if you know someone who is going through something, it can be difficult. And men, we tend to be able to hold it in and hide it very, very well. So if you know somebody that is struggling and you feel like they could use a listen or could benefit from this conversation anyway, please share this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and send to a friend. We appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah.